So the state of California will be reopening the assault weapons registration that closed back in 2018, as well as the Rhode v. Becerra case also has an update that you guys should be aware of. So let's talk about these. But real quick before we jump into this video, if you think that there is no such thing as assault weapons, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. I also want to give a shout out to two of the main sponsors of the channel. The first being Acelink Armor. Acelink Armor is a company out of here, the state of California. They have amazing bundles with good vests like this. This is the Famosa plate carrier with level 4 ceramic plates. Good value, and if you use the code ARMSCHOLAR, you will get 10% off of your order. I'll put a link to them down in the detail section. I also want to give a thanks to USCCA for supporting the channel. Through your membership, you get education, training, as well as self-defense liability protection. So if you concealed carry, if you carry a weapon, I highly recommend you look into some sort of protection. And I always recommend USCCA, and I'll put a link to them down in the detail section as well. So the state of California has entered into a settlement agreement in the Sharp v. Becerra case. Sharp v. Becerra deals specifically with a challenge to California's registry system that was instituted back in 2017-2018 to deal with the changes in the assault weapons language and the assault weapons redefinition in California Penal Code 30515. Back in 2016, the definition of what an assault weapon is in the state of California was changed so that it included things like rifles that had bullet buttons on them. And a lot of you who probably maybe are new to guns in California aren't familiar with bullet button rifles, but that was a thing back in the day, back in 2016, 2017, and before, where people had these mechanisms on their rifles where to detach the magazine, you had to use some sort of tool or a bullet, which gave the name the bullet button. And that was the whole mechanism that people were using. And prior to the change in law in 2016, it was legal to have a rifle like that with a bullet button on it. But the laws were changed so that bullet button rifles fell into the definition of assault weapons under California Penal Code 30515. And through this redefinition, there was also a mechanism where people could keep those types of bullet button rifles, but they would need to register them with the state of California as so-called assault weapons. Well, in the process of people trying to register these rifles with the state of California, like always, completely botched the mechanism, botched the website, were not able to actually fulfill the registries, and just it was a complete mess. And a lot of people were not able to actually register their rifles with the state of California, which ultimately made them subject to criminal penalties because they still couldn't even comply with California's laws in registering their rifles because the state of California completely just botched their system. And so this case, Sharp v. Becerra, arose out of this whole complete botching of the system registry back in 2017 and 2018. And this week, we got news that a settlement agreement was entered into in Sharp v. Becerra. And there are some really interesting things that are probably relevant for a lot of you guys. And one of the things you heard me say in the intro is that the state of California will be reopening the registry that closed back in 2018 for those individuals who were trying to actually register their rifles with the state of California, but were unable to because of the system problems that the state was having. So one of the main things I wanted to hit on this video is I've seen a lot of people asking me questions and just some information going around about everybody can now go register their firearms with the state of California as so-called assault weapons, that it's open to everybody now that it's been reopened. And that's just not correct. If you look at the settlement agreement, which I'll be pointing to you right here, if you go to the exhibit, you go to page 2, that number 1, it says reopening of the assault weapons registration per Penal Code section 30900B. It says defendant shall reopen the registration period for individuals who possessed eligible firearms. So that's obligation number 1. You must have possessed an eligible firearm prior to the registration back in 2018. B, and started the process of submitting applications to the Department of Justice, Bureau of Firearms, before July 1st, 2018, but who were unable to complete the submission process because of technical difficulties. So that's the main number 2 obligation that a lot of people are leaving out. A lot of people are saying, well, you could register if you possess this firearm prior to the initial registration back in 2018. That's not necessarily correct. When you look at the requirements for you to now be able to re-register now that it's being opened, it's that you must have tried to at least initially processed it back in 2018, but were unable to because of technical difficulties. So if you may have possessed one of these eligible firearms back then, but you never actually tried to submit it to the DOJ, technically you're not allowed to now go back and register it with the state of California. And this is hit on in the very next section when it says that this reopened registration period shall be available only to persons meeting all of the following requirements. Prior to January 1st, 2017, the person would have been eligible to register an assault weapon pursuant to subdivision B of Penal Code Section 30900. 2, the person lawfully possessed each assault weapon to be registered prior to January 1st, 2017. Again, you had that firearm prior to January 1st, 2017. The person attempted to register the assault weapon prior to the original registration deadline of midnight on July 1st, 2018, but was unable to do so because of technical difficulties. This goes to that additional requirement that I just spoke on, where you had to have actually tried to process it with the state of California. And then the final requirement is that the person timely registers the assault weapons in accordance with the terms of the stipulation. So this doesn't apply to everybody in the state of California. It only applies to those individuals with these specific criteria. So if you meet those criteria, and a lot of people may fall under these criteria where you tried to do this, but you're unable to, the question then becomes whether or not you should try to do this, and what are the stipulations in this settlement agreement about how you go about doing that. So first things first, when this actually hits, there's going to be a 120-day notice period where the state of California is going to have to notify everybody in the state of California that the registration is going to reopen. That registration that closed in 2018 is going to reopen, and that if you meet these criteria, then you can go and register it. Then after the 120 days, the registration will reopen for 90 days, and you will have that 90-day window to go to the state of California, the DOJ's website, and register this rifle if you want to. So for those of you who might meet all these criteria, your question might be whether or not you should go ahead and actually register your rifle with the state of California as a so-called assault weapon. This is a question maybe you had also back in 2018. You decided to still do the process because, again, that's one of those requirements. You weren't able to, and now you're saying, okay, well, maybe I should go back and do it again. Now, I think that's a personal decision you have to make on your own. A lot of people don't like the idea of registering a rifle with the state of California, mainly because, again, you're gonna be having a rifle registered with the state as a so-called assault weapon. And along with that comes various restrictions. Again, there are different laws for the transportation, the buying, selling, gifting, all of that of so-called assault weapons here in the state of California. They fall under different rules than other types of rifles. So for some people, again, even back in 2018, they decided, hey, I'm not going to register it with the state of California because I don't want them to know. And also, I don't want to have to deal with all the additional laws that come along with having a so-called assault weapon in the state. Instead, I'm going to configure it as a featureless rifle or as a compliant fixed mag rifle. Another good thing that potentially comes out of this as well is the fact that anyone who is maybe being actually criminally penalized right now for the state of California not processing their registration back in 2018, this settlement agreement says that the state prosecutors, law enforcement, whoever has to stop the enforcement of that, and they can't try to continue to enforce this against those individuals because the state of California botched the process back in 2018 and give them an opportunity to register those rifles now currently. Now, one last thing I want to mention, it's a kind of a tag along with this video, is that we got an update in Rhode v. Becerra as well. This deals with California's ammunition background checks, the eligibility checks, the basic and standard. If you're familiar with this case, it was before the Ninth Circuit, a 3-judge panel in the Ninth Circuit heard this case. There were some supplemental briefings that happened after the oral arguments, and we were kind of waiting for that court to make some sort of determination. Well, we got news that, kind of like Rhode v. Becerra, that was also up in the Ninth Circuit, which was put on hold. Rhode v. Becerra is also now on hold as well, because Duncan v. Becerra, which deals with California's bans on magazines that hold more than 10 rounds, that case is going en banc. And so, like Rhode v. Becerra is being put on hold for some sort of determination in Duncan v. Becerra. So all these other cases, Rhode and Rupp, are on hold until the en banc panel in the Ninth Circuit makes some sort of ruling on Duncan. So that's where we're at with Rhode. That's a quick little update. That's on hold. We're gonna have to wait for Duncan and some sort of determination in that. And I believe the date for that is June 22nd of this year. We have to wait for the en banc oral argument in that, and then some sort of determination by the Ninth Circuit until we'll get movement on Rhode and Rupp and all these other cases. So like I said, this is a good win for us here in the state of California, and maybe for those of you who are watching this who might fall under these categories and might now actually want to go register your rifles with the state of California. Again, that's a decision you have to make for yourself. But a big shout out goes to the team here at FPC who was part of this case, who helped this happen for us here in the state of California, and maybe those of you here watching. I highly recommend that if you're not a member of FPC, go take a look at FPC, maybe consider donating, becoming a member, anything like that if you are interested, because again, FPC is part of a lot of cases like Sharp v. Becerra, which we're talking about in this video, like Miller v. Becerra, that deals with the actual overarching challenge to California's language on so-called assault weapons that we talk about quite a bit here on this channel. FPC is on the forefront of fighting for California rights. So if you're interested, I highly recommend you guys go take a look at FPC. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and comment down below and I'll try to answer the best of my ability. Also, if you guys like this video and support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, subscribe, and make sure to hit that notification bell because that helps the channel analytics, helps us spread the word about the Second Amendment, also spread the word about things like this that are going on in the state of California. So as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and never forget this nation was built by armed scholars, this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.